The only way to sell a book is to get people to read past that first page. The voice, the story, the setting, all of it has to mesh in such a way to make the reader wonder, and then what? Now, publishing traditionally has had a fair amount of gatekeeping, right and wrong. Even today, if you're a publisher trying to get someone else to publish your work, you send your manuscript to agents or publishers, and your manuscript lands in what is called the quote unquote slush pile. Despite the term, it's actually not derogatory. It's simply the unsolicited manuscripts sent to the agent or publisher through the proper channels. Otherwise, they're just thrown away. All agents and publishers have directions for writers on how to submit manuscripts to them. Now, I know my stories and probably yours are amazing. And if the agents and publishers read the full story, they would see its shining merits. Unfortunately, time is limited, slush piles are enormous, and no one is getting paid for books that never sell. Most manuscripts from the slush pile are put down before the reader makes it through the first page. Welcome back to Morgan's Writing Tips and Writerly Musings with writing tips from the pros and, of course, my own writerly musings. I'm your host, Morgan Hazelwood, and today I'm here to share with you tips from Imaginarium 2023. I had the privilege to read a stack of first pages aloud to publishers and agents and hear firsthand why they would put down that first page. Now, the agents and publishers really do want to find that diamond in the pile of mediocre to bad stories, but they need a reason not to reject your story rather than a reason to reject it. There are just too many coming their way, and they can't publish everything. So, here are 8 reasons why agents and publishers stop reading your first page. Number 1, you didn't follow the submission guidelines. I know. Every literary agency and publisher has their own idea about what the perfect manuscript package looks like. It feels like they just want to make you jump through hoops. But they also want to make sure that, number 1, you understand the industry standards. Number 2, you can follow directions. And number 3, that you can communicate professionally. Even the best writers, if they're hard to work with, can have a hard time keeping an agent and a publisher. Use manuscript format, use standard fonts, act like a professional. Number 2 of why they put down your writing, your grammar or your writing needs work. Every writer has their own voice. Every character has their own way of communicating, and rules are meant to be broken. But you need to understand what the rule was intended to do. You can only break the rules if you don't sacrifice readability. Now, some people know innately where they can get away with things, but the rest of us have to do our homework. Other things beginner writers often do to weaken their writing are number 1, they overuse adverbs and adjectives instead of using stronger verbs. She walked slowly home rather than she trudged home. Next, they have multiple descriptive phrases to describe the same thing instead of picking the best one and deleting the rest. Another thing they do is they use filter words like think, feel, know, believe, seems, notice, spot, see, realize, wonder, decides, etc. She saw the birds fly past the window versus the birds flew past the window. Beginner writers often use passive voice. The birds were flying past the window versus the birds flew past the window. You can find passive voice in your writing by looking for instances of the verb to be paired with another verb. Forms of to be include am, is, was, were, be, being, and been. So make sure to edit your work thoroughly and be certain that it flows smoothly when read aloud. Number three of why they put down your writing, you focus too much on an aspect. Whether it's action, description, or world building, if you go more than 2 paragraphs without breaking up an aspect of your writing, especially on page one, your pacing is probably off. While film and TV can get away with starting in true media res, with books, you're probably better off letting us know who the characters are and why we should care before we're in the middle of an expansive action scene. You can have a little one at the beginning. Now, if you're coming from a screenwriting background or an MFA, you got your master's in fine arts, it can be tempting to fully describe the scene before you get started with the story. Resist the urge, especially if you're not doing literary fiction, or at least have your main character pace the room while you're doing it. And let's keep the world building to a sentence or two at a time. Slowly filter it in and let the full setting come into focus as you build the story around it or it around the story. Number four, why they put down your story. You don't know your genre today. Your voice should reflect the genre. If you're writing a lighthearted fantasy, but all of the descriptions would better fit a thriller or a generational literary drama, but the language is aimed at 10-year-olds, it's going to be a hard sell. If your word count is outside of current genre standards, especially for a debut novelist, it's going to be a hard sell. If your voice and your pacing ignore what's been selling for the last 10 or more years and instead reflect the classics you read as a child, it's going to be a hard sell. So, number five, why they put down your story, your characters are passive. In the current trends, publishers are looking for characters with agency, where the characters make choices and suffer consequences, not just follow the plot along for the ride. Note, in some genres like coming of age or women's lit or anything where the main character is, quote, finding themselves or something like that, you can get away with starting off more passive as long as the character grows into their own. That can be part of the story. So, number six, they put it down because you're using tired cliches. While tropes and cliches often help define your genre, there are a few that have been overdone, especially on that first page. Number one, waking up, either using the dream as the opening action sequence or literally just starting the character's day. Number two, describing your character by having them look into a mirror. Number three, have your have your character describe things that are everyday to them, their day job, the culture they live in, etc. And there are some overused phrases like releasing a breath I didn't know I was holding, which I overuse. Number seven, you're being vague and overly dramatic. While that's definitely a valid choice for a voice, it's a hard sell for the narrative of a story. Specificity is what draws us in. If you're vague enough, Fern Gully, Avatar with the aliens, and Pocahontas are the same movie. Make sure the reader knows that this isn't a story they've read 100 times, or if it is, that the voice and the storytelling are going to make it worth their time. And number eight of why they put down the story, you're starting in the wrong place. Sometimes writers start with a prologue or a flashback with a different point of view character. And there are some genres, I think thrillers, where it's done, but in most, it's best to avoid starting with a different character because if you start off with one character and switch to another, it's really jarring and hard for the characters to get invested in that secondary character. Also, beginner writers and sometimes more experienced ones often start the story about 5 pages into the novel. Meanwhile, the opening is simply scene setting, world building, or showing off their fancy writing chops. If you're tempted to send in page 5 instead of page 1, or would rather pick a different scene to read for an audience than the beginning, it might behoove you to think twice about where your story starts. I know I've got a lot to think about concerning my own opening pages. Best of luck to you with your writing, and I'll be back again next week with more writing tips and writerly musings. Bye bye.